Welcome to this explainer. We are jumping right into a truly fascinating expedition today. We're going to explore the geography, the vibrant culture, and the incredibly complex history of South America and the Caribbean. It's a region of striking beauty and energy, and we're going to break it all down to understand exactly how the physical landscape has shaped the people, and in turn, how the people have shaped the land.
But hey, before we map out our journey, take a look at this. What do you think this is? A ceremonial necklace? Or maybe an ancient accounting system? Well, if you guessed accounting system, you hit the nail on the head. This is a quipu. It's an incredibly ingenious device used by the ancient Inca civilization. Because they didn't have a traditional written alphabet, they used these variously colored threads knotted in specific ways to record everything from dates and statistics to rich folk stories. It's a perfect example of human adaptation and brilliance, which is exactly the kind of ingenuity we'll be uncovering today.
Okay, let's dive into this. To make sense of such a vast area, we'll use this agenda as our expedition map across 5 key themes: mapping the land, rhythms and culture, shaping the environment, the flow of movement, and finally, forging modern regions.
First up, Theme 1, Mapping the Land, Location and Place in the Southern Hemisphere.
When we talk about southern Latin America, we are talking about a region of truly staggering scale. It stretches all the way from the warm waters of the Caribbean Sea down to Cape Horn. If we look closely at the northern part of this massive region, you'll see the Caribbean is defined by its archipelago. What's an archipelago? It's basically a vast grouping of over 7,000 closely scattered islands. They're divided into major groups like the Greater Antilles, which includes the larger islands like Jamaica and Cuba, and the Lesser Antilles, which is this beautiful arc of smaller islands stretching down towards South America.
Moving down onto the South American continent, the geography features some of the most extreme biomes on Earth. And a biome is just an area classified by the specific plants and animals that live there. On the western edge, you've got the Andes Mountains. It's literally the world's longest mountain range, featuring the towering Aconcagua Peak at almost 23,000 feet. But here's the wild part. Nestled right along that western coastal plain is the Atacama Desert. It is a biome so incredibly dry that it receives less than a half-inch of rainfall a year, making it the driest desert in the entire world. Crazy, right?
All right, moving right along to theme number 2, Rhythms, Cultures, and People, the Human Landscape.
Geography isn't just about rocks and rivers, it's really about the people. And Latin America is home to roughly 525 million people. It's a deeply complex blend of indigenous, European, and African heritage, along with the mestizo class. Now, what's really interesting here is how we see this immense diversity physically manifest in the region's traditional music. Take samba in Brazil, for example. It has deep rhythmic roots in the West African slave trade. Tango, on the other hand, was born from the deeply emotive experiences of European immigrants down in Argentina and Uruguay. Then you have cumbia, which is this massive pan-Latin genre blending various cultural instruments like pianos and bongo drums. And of course, salsa utilizes heavy brass and percussion to mimic traditional African call and response patterns. So the historical flow of people quite literally created the unique musical beats of the region.
Which brings us to our third theme, Shaping the Environment through Dependency, Adaptation, and Modification.
There's always this underlying tension between human populations and the physical world they inhabit. People have to figure out how to survive, which means using, modifying, or adapting to the land around them. Let's compare 2 very different approaches across time. The ancient Inca lived in the incredibly steep Andes Mountains. To survive there, they adapted by inventing terrace farming. They actually carved flat, sustainable steps right into the mountainsides to grow crops like potatoes and beans. It worked in total harmony with a really harsh environment. Now contrast that with modern-day Venezuela, which sits on absolutely massive oil reserves. While this industry brings incredible wealth, the modification of the environment through modern oil extraction has resulted in severe struggles with toxic waste, air pollution, and devastating oil spills that really threaten local water sources.
But perhaps the most urgent example of environmental modification is happening right now in the Amazon rainforest. According to the World Wildlife Fund, a staggering 20% of the Amazon rainforest has already been completely destroyed. 20%. It's being aggressively cleared for livestock ranches, agriculture, mining, and logging.
And honestly, the global stakes of this deforestation could not be higher. The Amazon is called the lungs of the earth for a very good reason. It covers 40% of South America and produces 20% of the entire world's oxygen. It absorbs massive amounts of carbon dioxide, and without it, the global greenhouse effect drastically accelerates. Beyond that, it supplies 25% of our modern plant-based prescription drugs, and it houses millions of animal species, not to mention uncontacted Amerindian tribes. So when we lose the Amazon, the whole entire planet feels the impact.
To understand how we got to this point, we need to look at our fourth theme, the flow of movement, history, conquest, and independence. The story of southern Latin America is one of conquest and profound, sweeping change. It started with thriving native civilizations like the Taíno in the Caribbean and the massive Inca Empire in the Andes. But, as we know, the late 1400s brought European explorers searching for gold, which led to devastating colonization and the brutal encomienda labor system. But hey, empires don't last forever, right? Sparked by the intellectual movement of the Enlightenment and, honestly, the distraction of the French Revolution, the colonies saw their chance. And this brilliantly illustrates a domino effect. In 1804, Haiti successfully executed a slave revolt and declared independence. They became a powerful beacon for the entire region. Soon after, from 1807 to 1830, leaders like the legendary Simon Bolivar led a series of successful revolutions across South America, effectively ending European imperial dominance and giving birth to totally new, sovereign nations.
Which naturally leads us to our final theme, forging modern regions, politics, and economics today.
So after throwing off the yoke of colonialism, these newly independent nations had to figure out how to actually structure themselves, and they took very different political paths based on their distinct geographic and historical realities. Down in South America, the dominant system is the presidential republic. In countries like Argentina, Brazil, and Colombia, a single elected president acts as both the head of state and the head of government. However, because of a completely different decolonization process, many Caribbean island nations operate as parliamentary democracies under a constitutional monarchy. In places like the Bahamas or Jamaica, a prime minister runs the day-to-day government, while a British monarch often remains the official head of state.
Economically, the whole region is defined by this fascinating tug-of-war between two main strategies: nationalization and privatization. Some nations lean heavily toward nationalization. This is where the state takes direct control of major industries, like oil or electricity, primarily to reduce foreign influence and direct those profits straight into social programs. On the other side, other nations lean toward privatization. They sell off public industries to foreign investors and private companies. The goal there is to boost market efficiency, lower consumer prices, and improve infrastructure. Both of these approaches are aiming for economic stability, but each comes with its own unique set of benefits and challenges for the everyday citizens living there.
Now, up in the Caribbean, economic survival often requires some serious teamwork. Many of these island economies rely really heavily on tourism and North American corporations. So to empower themselves, 20 developing countries formed CARICOM. That's the Caribbean Community and Common Market. By removing tariffs and creating a single free trade area, these nations don't have to constantly compete against each other. Instead, they collaborate. They focus on what they produce best, which really helps them navigate the heavy pressures of the global market together.
And when these regional economies scale up successfully, the results are just massive. Today, South America is on course to become a global financial powerhouse. So the crucial point here is looking at a prime example like Brazil's dominance in the free market sugar trade. Brazil alone accounts for 20% of all global sugar production and more than 40% of world exports. It is an absolute industrial boom, and it perfectly showcases the region's modern economic potential on the world stage.
We've covered the majestic peaks, the rhythmic cultures, the turbulent history, and some seriously booming modern economies. But I want to leave you with a thought that brings this all back home. Given what we just learned about the lungs of our Earth, how does the destruction of the Amazon rainforest impact your own life globally? The geography of southern Latin America isn't just a distant map. Its environmental and economic fate is intimately tied to the air you breathe and the future of our entire planet. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.